Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodie Lynn and
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Jodie Lynn, I thought we were going to be talking about relationships and love languages today, but that didn't quite work out because our guests couldn't make it. So we're going to have to invent our own language today. Well,
hey,
our
I
own
like it.
topic anyway.
I like it. We could talk about love and love languages. That's a fascinating topic.
It is. It's definitely a fascinating topic. Actually, there's all kinds of room here for what we're going to do because you and I didn't really talk about what we're going to do without the guest today. So we're just going to wing it literally from right now.
I love it.
Yeah. And well, you're a channeler, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with a title for myself. I'm thinking I'm like a podcast host channel.
Definitely.
Like I can receive stuff as the host and I'm in desperate mode for what's the next question, and I open my mouth and something comes out. So to that degree, I'm a podcast host channel.
Yeah, you could shorten it too. You could just say you're a channeler also.
Oh no, that's much too scary.
Okay, you are a podcast host channeler.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, actually, that's a fun way of getting into what I think would be an interesting topic. And it kind of reminds me of something you and I were talking about off stage that I don't want to bring in, but I mean, unless you really want to, but it hits on a general thing that lots of people encounter, and that is we often run into things in life that are uncomfortable for us, that are challenging, that are tough. That we call them growth opportunities. My ex used to call it an FGO. You can imagine what the F is, because that's what they are.
Frickin'.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're growth opportunities. We grow through them, and we always come out stronger the other end. Isn't it fascinating, though, that despite the fact that we've been through these things over and over and over again, we still dread them. We still don't want to have to face up to them. We still don't want to have to go through them. We still don't want to have to deal with them. It's like, can't they just go away?
Yeah, can it just be easy? Actually, we can loop in that other conversation that we're having. I don't mind. But before you and I hopped into backstage, I was having this similar conversation with one of my friends, and we were talking about growth opportunities, and she keeps getting this message that, like we're on the downhill, like slide, like it's all working out, like we're with the momentum, we're going there. And she's like, but I just don't feel like that's it. And the thing that I had said to her, which works perfectly into this conversation, is it our perception of what that's supposed to feel like or look like? And she's like, well, I don't get why, if it's all done and it's all in place and, it's just coming, why more stuff is coming in? And I'm like, well, you think about a snowball and it's rolling downhill. It's still accumulating more and more snow. It's growing. It's not stopping. Like, is it just our perception of what that is supposed to feel like that is causing this resistance? And maybe it's the same for this conversation too. These, growth moments or FG moments. Maybe it's the perception from our past of, they were hard and they were dirty and they were cumbersome, or, they didn't feel good, or whatever it is that we have a perception of. And I don't want to go through that again. Like, that was tough. Maybe it's just the perception.
Of course, it's the perception. I mean, what else could it be? How interesting, too, the way that you framed her comment. Obviously, I didn't hear when she was saying it, so I'm kind of going with what you framed. But the way you framed it really said it in a very interesting way. She said, it's all coming so easily. Why do we have to go through having more stuff come through?
Yeah.
And my initial reaction is, well, that's the way the universe works. The universe doesn't just send you one thing that you want. It keeps sending them over and over and over and over and over again, new examples all the time until you finally pick something.
Yeah.
So why should we expect that once it's coming, it's going to just stop? I don't understand the thinking. I mean, I do, because, that's what happens when we get into these limited mindsets. But when you really think about it, like, why should we expect the flow to stop?
Right? Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Isn't that one of like the laws of thermodynamics also? Something about energy and motion?
Well, sure, yeah. Yeah, well, that's one of the Newtonian laws, right?
Right.
Motion tends to stay in motion.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes sense why it would continue.
Yep. And to carry out the analogy further, it's a physics analogy. An object tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an equal and opposite force. And what is that equal and opposite force? It's one of our favorite topics. Resistance.
Resistance. Oh man, right back, full circle, right back
Full
to where
circle,
we
right?
resisting the FG moments.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe it's for your good.
You think?
No, well, it always is. Yeah, I always look at these opportunities for growth as for my good.
Oh, I
They
thought you were explaining why we do it, why we resist. I thought that was what the explanation
Well,
was.
I mean that's also for our good.
Oh,
We think
okay.
there's a part of our brain that's like, oh no, that's a bear trap. Step away,
Right.
step back very slowly, run away. No. Our brain is thinking it's bad for us. So it's for our own good that we're thinking these things. So it's both.
There's also a rather, what phrase do I want to use? What adjective? Nefarious, maybe? Not quite. Ironic, maybe, is a better word. There's an ironic side to that. You know, that reason, that purpose behind why we set ourselves up in this way. In other words, it's that on some level, we know we're going to set ourselves up. On some level, we know we're going to put ourselves in a really uncomfortable position. And it was our intention to do so. And that, now talk about things that scare me. That scares me. Like, what was I thinking? This is my favorite phrase to use that. What was I thinking to come up with that as an idea?
I always combat that when I get into that, like that mental state of like, what, why God, why?
Mm-hmm.
I think I never would have chosen poorly. Like I'm smart. And like, this is just the human version of me. And I think that I'm smart. And I don't say that to be like boastful. I just think that I've been through enough that I've figured a lot out. I've learned a lot over my life. So I'm smart in certain regards, not math. But well, that's the point.
I don't believe that, but okay.
Math and maps, the two M's, you know,
okay.
Not great for me. But anyway, but I always come back to like I wouldn't have chosen poorly. So there must be something like really incredible inside of this. And you know what? We just moved out of our office for my brokerage business. We just finished our lease and we were in there for 8 years. And I over the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of opportunities while cleaning and like painting and, you know, doing all of these things to reflect on all of the moments and how much, you know, I've changed and how much that space has changed me and all of the different things. And I was even having this conversation with my friend before our show because she was my partner in the office. And like, there was days, actually there were several months throughout those 8 years where I would sit in her office and I would just cry my eyes out because I wasn't sure how we were going to pay the rent.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So many times where I was like, I don't know how to do this. And even though she was my partner, I was the financial backer. And I was the one that would have to come up with the extra money when we're short, or if somebody shorted us rent, because our agents would pay us rent. If somebody shorted us rent, it was my responsibility to come up with that money. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like $500 a month. Like our rent was $2,800 a month. So it was, you know, several $1,000s that I was having to come up with, you know, at a moment's notice in some ways. And so like that was hard, dealing with like running the office and like all of these things. And there was moments where I was like, why did I do this? Why did I choose this? Why is this happening to me? Like when COVID broke out, we went to work from home. So since COVID has happened, which is now 4 years, right?
Yep.
Since then, I've used the office 3 times.
Really? Wow.
3 times. Yeah. I mean, I'd still go there to check in on it and make sure everything's good, because that's part of having a space and whatever. But like, we stripped the phone line out of it and went digital with that. We took the internet out. Like, we did everything we could to just save money, because nobody was in that space. Like, the financial industry changed so much that we used to get like insurance policies, investment packages, like all of this stuff on paper when we were in the office before 2020. And then boom, 2020 happened and everything went digital. Like,
Right.
we no longer had paper applications anymore. We no longer, like, there's no mail that actually goes to our branch whatsoever. It was crazy. So we haven't used that space in 4 years like we used to. And we've still been paying for it, $2,800 a month.
Yeah, not cheap.
So not cheap. No. So I've cursed this place and how much money, and like, I really had these conversations with myself. Like, if I wasn't paying all that money, like, I could have built my house already. I could have done this, like, really shaming myself for this decision that I made to open this office and everything else. And so in those moments, I was like, what the F have I done? Why, God, why? But now, looking back on it, there's so much there. Like, that's the place where I met my husband. He like literally walked into my office. Speaking of love, he literally walked into my office. That happened. I got to go through those moments, and really, like, when I look back, I see how supported I was by the universe, by God. Like, I never missed a payment. We were never, late on payments or anything like that. It all happened the way that it needed to. I had the space to grow and change. I went through like my spiritual awakening inside of that space, because nobody was watching me. I was the boss. Whereas when I was in a bigger, city office, the people who trained me and who were my leaders, they were always like, what are you doing? Are you at the office? You're either in appointments or you're on appointments, or you're making phone calls, or you're not working. So I was really ingrained in that hustle culture in that other office. So this space gave me the opportunity to reimagine what life could look like. COVID gave me the opportunity to reimagine what my work life could look like outside of being in an office. I've done so much growth. So when I look back, I can see the higher self, Jodie Lynn, like the soul of me. She didn't choose poorly. It was a wise choice. There was a lot of lessons in there. But the human version of me many times was like, what the F?
Yeah, well, the higher end version of Walt Thiessen, I've often wondered about.
He wouldn't have chosen badly either, or poorly.
I like to believe that. I want to believe that. Do I believe that? Not really. I honestly feel that a lot of the time I feel like I was up there just saying, okay, let's see what the dice throw today. That one came up blackjack, although not blackjack, but craps. But the point is that it felt so random so much of the time.
Yeah.
Except for those times when it felt like it was random and it was stacked against me.
But when you look back at those moments in particular, do you see that that's still randomness, or is there like a theme that runs through it? Like, if I wouldn't have went through that, then I probably wouldn't have turned left or right.
Oh, there's definitely a theme that runs through it. I just don't know how prescient my higher self was in setting me on that course. I mean, if my higher self was prescient enough to set me on that course, I'm going to have a talk with it when I get back there, because
that was not the way to teach you.
That was not the best route. No.
Well, you know what? But that like really begs the question. Our guest last week, we were talking to her, and she was talking about we were talking about religion and faith, and what she believes in now.
Mhm.
And she said, I believe in a higher power, but I don't believe in like a sky daddy. Is what
Right.
she
I
said.
love that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, a sky daddy that controls all the things like a puppet master. And,
Right.
I'm really on the fence between these two thoughts.
Really?
Like,
Okay.
yes. And I really, and I didn't say anything last week because I really, that's just who I am. I sit back and
Mhm.
I think and I observe and
Mhm.
I take in information until I know more to make a decision.
Mhm.
And maybe I'll never know the answer to this.
I don't know.
But there is a part of me that firmly believes that nothing is by accident.
Okay.
And when I look back on my life, like even career path is the easiest one to look at. But my career, I was like, I want to be a nurse. Just kidding. I don't like that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I started working at like a security company as an administrator because I was just broke and I needed money. And that's where my boyfriend's mom worked. So, I
Okay.
was like, please give me a job. And then I went back to school. I went to environmental studies. I wanted to do environmental remediation, and then I got done with school, and I couldn't find a job. There was nobody. It was like, you need experience, but you won't hire me to get experience. So I was stuck back at the security company, and then that led me into safety. And then through safety, I tried to get my brokerage license to do financial advising, and I failed miserably because I just didn't study very well. and so I left that behind. And then years later, as I was in the safety industry, that came back. And I didn't even realize that they were the same course until I passed the exam. And then
Really?
it showed, yeah, then it showed the like 4 times before that I had failed, which is crazy. Side note on that,
Wow.
the way that test works is that you have, I think, 3 chances to write. If you fail all 3, you have to wait 6 months or a year before you can write it again. And so
Okay.
that's when I quit the first time because I failed 3 times. But then when you go back to write it again, and now this is years later, you get 1 shot and then you have to wait 6 months.
Okay.
So I didn't know that going into my exam.
Probably just as well.
Yeah. So, but when I looked at my marks, all of the marks were there. The pass mark that I had just achieved, plus the other 3 times that I'd written and failed with the other company, which is interesting. And then from that to like having my coaching business and having the farm, like
Mhm.
I see now all the little pieces that I picked up in each of those careers and
Mhm.
how they seem so random on the surface, but when I really look into them, they were on purpose. I needed to go that direction in my life for
Mhm.
a reason. So there's that side of me that says nothing is by accident. It's
Okay.
all on purpose, which would mean that there is a plan and that I'm executing some sort of plan,
Okay.
which could be the Sky Daddy thing. I don't know. I have no idea. But then on the other side, I believe in free will. So I don't know.
You don't know. All right. Well, hey, that's an honest statement that not many people are willing to make these days. So I applaud you for being willing to say you don't know.
Thank you.
That's the mark of somebody who truly is wise, as opposed to the one who says, I always know the answer, demonstrating thereby that he's an idiot.
I
but
almost never know the answer.
but on that question, I believe I think about it differently. It was interesting to hear how you think about it. The way I think about it is, for me, everything is connected, and because everything is connected, therefore everything is energy also, and that's right out of quantum physics. But take that to the next step. It's also, this is where it becomes metaphysical. That's also where it becomes conscious. So everything is conscious, which, by the way, took me years of doing this podcast to get to that point.
Yeah.
But I got to that point, and I started that. That's my new starting point. And from that starting point, I look around and I say, okay, well, if everything is conscious, I'm looking right now at this monitor because we're talking on computers via the internet. So I'm looking at this monitor that's sitting in front of me, and it's alive and it's conscious. And I'm looking at this cup of water, and it's alive and it's conscious. And I'm looking at the curtain over here, and it's alive and it's conscious. And my brain is saying to me, "Are you out of your mind? Of course it's not conscious." But I'm trying to remind myself, this is what it has to add up to. This, what I understand about how all this stuff works. It has to be. It must be true. It really can't be anything else. Or to use the Sherlock Holmes method of thinking about it, once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And it's very improbable, but it's got to be true because I believe all the rest of it. Either that or else I have to reject all my beliefs, one or the other. There's not a lot of room in there for a third option.
Right.
So when I look at it that way, then the question becomes, okay, well, if everything is connected and everything is conscious, now here's where the Godhead thing comes in. Is there a Godhead at the top of it? Or is it all just life forms all over the place that are all these various conscious forms without one particular central head? For me, that's the question of whether or not God exists.
But wouldn't it be chaos if there was no central head?
Sure.
But is it chaos?
Sure. Well, it's both, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, there's a lot of things that look chaotic. I was having this conversation with Nate yesterday. We were talking about cloud seeding. Oh my gosh. A totally different topic. But anyway, he was just talking about there's a report from Abu Dhabi or somewhere, Saudi Arabia. I don't know. Maps. And they were talking about like the process of cloud seeding, and it's salt that they put in there, and it's not a bunch of chemicals. And that was his point. And I was like, I don't know if I believe that. This is where I'm going with this. I don't know if I believe that. But the other thing is that when I think about the systems, the unique, intricate systems within our body and how they operate in this homeostasis, like symbiotic pattern, like how they all rely on one another. And it's not, me doing something to make my lungs breathe. That's just something that is already happening. Maybe it's a part of my brain that says breathe, but it's not a conscious me doing thing. And how beautiful that system is and how intricate that system is. That's where we got to the cloud seeding. Like, I don't believe that there's clouds and that they don't know it's time to make rain. Like that they would have messed that one up. Like, it just seems like the body is way more complex than that. And maybe I'm just oversimplifying, but that when I look at systems like that, I think about the order of things and how there is, maybe on the surface, it looks like chaotic, but when you really begin to understand, you see how orderly things are. And where does that order come from?
Yeah. I think one of the cool things about the universe is that it's both. It's chaotic and it's ordered. It has elements of both, all intertwined amongst itself.
Well, you know what else I just thought about? On this plane, there's contrast. There's duality.
There's a little bit. Yeah, I've noticed it. Just over the last 67 and 68 years, I've noticed it's there. You're like, oh, yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Oh, welcome. This is my friend. We're best buddies now. Just kidding. But in that statement of there being contrast, then there would have to be both. Would there not?
Sure.
Because everything has the opposite.
And that's what leads me to really lean on the side of no Godhead.
No Godhead.
Yeah. I asked myself, let's say there is a Godhead, just hypothetically speaking. My first question associated with that is why? Why is it necessary? Is it necessary to have a Godhead in order to have all this stuff be alive and conscious and energy and all that stuff? Because I don't see how it becomes a necessity for that. I can see how it certainly makes it easier for humans to explain what's going on in terms of there being a Godhead, but I don't see the necessity of actually having one. Like the whole thing would fall apart without it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the best argument why there isn't one.
Why there isn't one.
Yeah.
Option number 3.
Oh, we get 3 options. Okay.
This just came to me. Option number 3. It is both. There is, but there also isn't, because we all are.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. No, I like that. That's actually very good.
Well, because somebody once said that the universe, God, whatever you want to call that being, it like we are all representations of God. We're the religious side of things is made in the likeness of God. But I've heard lots of spiritual people say that we are fractals of God and having this experience. Okay, so option number 3, what if it's just that is true? We are all fractals having the experience and therefore are all God. So it's both.
I would say another way of expressing the same idea is, if we are projecting the idea that everything is alive, why can't all that be a single entity? I mean, each of our bodies consists of trillions of cells. Each one of those cells are individually alive, but combined together, they create us.
They create one. Yeah, so what if the one is the all? And the all is the one.
And so now it comes down to, what does it mean to be the consciousness of all consciousness? What does that mean? And we're so beyond anything that my little human brain can handle that I can't even begin to answer that one.
And maybe we don't understand until we lose this physical form, because there's a lot of things like I think the God conversation is difficult because of our physical form. Like the people who are listening to this right now, they're law of attraction people like us, they're getting the conversation. But if I was to say that to somebody else, like, we are God, it is all one, so therefore like all is one and one is all, it would be very hard to process that.
Well, it's hard for me to process, so I could understand.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a part of our conditioning to think that you're just a human. You're just 1 in 8 billion or however many people we have on this planet now. You're so insignificant. Like, even when we talk about the solar system or, the universe, like, look at what's behind you. When we start to think about those things, it's usually like prefaced in a way that you are insignificant.
That's true. That's the way a lot of it is framed.
And then so to take that conditioning your entire life of maybe not said and not meaning it like you mean nothing, but still that same connotation of being insignificant in comparison, and then to try and absorb that you are the most significant. How do you digest that? That's
where the brain boggles. My mind can handle that one.
Exactly, right? Like, no, it does not compete. Yeah, it does not compute. Like, it's just no.
It's more like the old video game, or not video games, the old pinball tables. Tilt. My brain just won't go there.
It just won't go there. That's not that. It feels very awkward to say that.
It does. So I guess to kind of conclude that little segment, I'd have to say I don't spend a lot of time on the question. I don't give a lot of attention to, is there a Godhead or not, because I don't like to drive myself crazy.
Yeah. These are things I do for fun. Like, how does this work? When you were talking about, like, everything has consciousness, these curtains have consciousness, like, this microphone has consciousness, this computer has consciousness, and you said something like that, then what, or something like that. I was thinking, I wonder what they think of me. Like, what they're looking at me. Like, I feel like I have 1,000 eyes on me right now.
Well, there's an interesting piece to that, because if what we're saying, what we're speculating about is true and everything is connected in that way, then in a sense, everybody is looking at once. But they're not necessarily all looking at you, because there's almost an infinite number of possible places to look.
True.
I mean, there's a whole lot of attention going on there.
Yeah.
What I wonder about is, with all that attention going on, this is the closest I can come to the idea of a single godlike entity. With all that attention going on, if we're all connected, doesn't it make sense that all of that data that's coming in through our senses, through our experiences, through all the different ways that we can experience the data. All that is coming into that collective energy field and doing God knows what, but it's doing what it's going to do in that space, that energetic space, so to speak. In the course of doing that, doesn't that mean that everybody else is connecting into that globular bunch of data that's kind of in the midst of all of our collective connectivity there? And isn't that really what we are all drawing upon? Like we were talking about channeling. We were kind of teasing me about how I don't like to think of myself as a channel, and you really are more of a channel and so forth. But isn't that what that is? That channeling is we're connecting into that globular, massive data dump. You know, the great AI horde of the world, of the universe, of everything, all just kind of hooked in there. And so in that sense, well, we are kind of all looking at all of the elements at once. It's just not necessarily out of those particular eyes at those particular moment in time and so forth. That doesn't necessarily play that way, but the collective information, yeah, we're always tied into that.
Of course.
And no wonder we're confused. I mean, that's a lot to process.
It is a lot to process. And I think that up to a certain point of our lives, we're very unaware or unconscious of all of these things. And I think society plays a part in that, of, like not utilizing some of these skills or honing in on them or refining them or whatever, all of these things. But I think also it's like a safety mechanism at some point. Because if you had conscious awareness of all of that data all at once, you'd probably go insane.
Well, that also raises a question. Of course, it raises lots of questions. Any of these deep dives that we do raise a lot of questions. But if it's going to create insanity, then is it fair to say that the pursuit of God is insane?
Maybe.
I mean, it kind of one A leads to B. It's kind of unavoidable at that point.
Yeah. My brain is broken officially. I don't know. I don't know. But I think these things, like there's some things that we're innately unconscious of, but also aware of at the same time. Like I think we are accessing all of this information and just not aware that we're processing it, or our body is processing it. Like that's what a gut feeling is. You walk down a dark alley and you get this like, I shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be doing this, or whatever, right? That's you processing information that you can't see. I think I've told this story before, but there was like a Ted Bundy, I think case or whatever. I think after he was caught, and I could be getting the serial killer wrong because I'm not up on my serial killer, jargon.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. We'll assume that it's Ted. I mean,
okay.
If it's not Ted, it's Charlie Manson. It's somebody in that realm.
Yeah. It's one of those that was really bad. Anyway, after he was caught, this woman came forward and she was talking about how her and her sister, their parents own like a furniture store or something like that, and how he came in and was like, I want this dresser. Can I take it today? And they're like, no, we're closing. And he's like, no, I just want to take it today. Just stay open a few more minutes, whatever. Help me get it to my car. Help me get it to my place. Whatever. And the girls were like, no, absolutely not. And like, he was really all over them. And they were like, no, absolutely not. And he was like, oh, meet me tomorrow morning. And the one girl was like, okay, I'll think about it, whatever. Right. And then she eventually said, no, I'm not going to help you do this. Come back when the store is open, kind of thing. And then it wasn't until his face was on the news that she recognized him and was like, oh my God, like I could have been his next victim.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So what conclusion do you draw from that? Because I right now my mind is still boggled. I don't have a good way to tile that in.
Yeah, well, that on some level we're interpreting the data that is in that field that is unseen. That our body, like that maybe perhaps we don't need to understand or have what we perceive as a conscious awareness of what the information is, or how to interpret it, or how to glean it, or how to read it, or any of that stuff, because we're innately built to receive the communication.
I still don't know how to process that.
Your body's just doing it for you. Just let your brain
just let
get
the
out
body
of the
do
way.
it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
just
that-
let
that's
your
probably-
body do it. Just
I mean-
come back to your body and feel into it, and you will become smarter. Yeah.
I think if I were to turn that into an aphorism, I'd say trust your gut. That's what that amounts to.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Which is usually good policy anyway. So I can live with that one. I mean, there aren't too many times that I can think of where I trusted my gut and it didn't work out. There have been times when I followed what I thought was my gut, and I realized afterward it wasn't really. I was trying to talk myself into it.
But maybe our brain wasn't meant to comprehend these things. Like, for as smart as the brain is, we're only using a small portion of it. So maybe the small portion that we use of our brain can't comprehend this conversation and like the magnitude of it.
To me, I think that shows how amazing the brain is.
Yeah.
I mean, we have this brain that we're using a tiny fraction of, and we're able to explore this far with it. Like, damn, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So
it just makes me think, why haven't we explored the rest?
Well, you also have to kind of take into account what they mean by that phrase, right? That we only use a small percentage of our brain, because what they're really talking about is using the small percentage of the brain to accomplish X task, or to have it show up under a certain test condition. And the part that makes that such a challenge is, well, how do we know that that's an accurate representation of the brain at work?
We have no idea.
I mean, we know a lot more than we did, say, 50 years ago about how the brain works, but how much do we really understand? I think it would be safe to say we barely have scratched the surface.
I feel like the more that I know, the more that I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think we've kind of taken that one as far as we can go. I'm going to propose a radical idea, because something has happened during the show that rarely happens. And we don't have a whole lot of situations where we're unable to connect with a guest, but sometimes it does happen. What almost never happens is where the guest can show up in the middle of the show. But that's exactly what's happened, because our guest, Charlene Byar, who got diverted from joining us at the beginning of the show, has come. And so I'm thinking, why don't we bring her on and we'll kind of switch the conversation over midstream. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Let's do it.
So let's bring her on. If she can connect in. Right now, it looks like she's connected in audio only. Can you hear us, Charlene?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yay! Yes. First of all, I know we're live on the show, and I just want to say, usually something that doesn't happen to me either is I'm really good with time. So I have no idea how in the world did I get so mixed up. So first I'm going to apologize, because I'm sitting here going, what is happening right now? How did I get this so wrong? So I just want to say, I apologize. We have somebody in the hospital. So it's just been, my schedule has been really crazy lately. So I just wanted to apologize for that. But hi. How you doing?
Apology accepted. No problem. Don't worry about it.
Camera on. Let me see if it. Okay, hold on.
And whoever has been, oh, hello there. Now we can see your face.
Hi.
And whoever it is you're dealing with who's in the hospital, we wish them a speedy recovery with whatever it is they're dealing with. So that's a lot. That kind of thing is a lot to deal with.
It's a lot to deal with. It's your life gets a little, well, you know what? It's okay. I can handle it because she's in the hospital, but life gets turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, life gets turned around when and not only life gets turned around, truly, something that she just went through, it actually puts life in perspective.
You're kind of tying into what we talked about for the first half hour of the show. Actually.
Oh,
Because we were talking about, I mean, there's a lot of ways to explore what we were talking about, but in general, we were talking about how we deal with, or even fail to deal with the stuff that comes at us in life, and how we end up trying to decide at any given moment in time, how are we going to respond? And that led us down this deep rabbit hole where we started experiencing God, the universe, and everything else. But
you're all over the place, Charlene.
Well, it's interesting. So we'll just talk about just for a second, because I'm literally in the middle of this, right? My dearest friend that I've known since I was 10 years old, her mother, who is a very healthy, vibrant lady, she's young. She's only like 72. And, she's truly like a second mom to me. I grew up with her my whole life. I'm 52 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I've known them since I was 10. And she last week had a stroke. Oh. And it was they call it I'm not, in medical terms, I don't know all the details of it, but it was basically a full body stroke. And my girlfriend is, she is pretty much a workaholic. She's a doctor. So she works all the time. And like, no matter what, like Easter, I mean, she just works. And I've never experienced what I'm experienced with her. And it is very challenging because obviously Martha is in the hospital, but it is beautiful to see how this experience has just put life in perspective for all of us. And Belinda's like, I'm not going to say bad words, but she's like, work and all that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What really matters in life. And we talked about that literally today. She said, what's life? What's important? It's relationships. It's the people that we love. And it's the time that we have with them. It's the conversations. It's everything else is just bonus. And so she is going to take a leave of absence for a year. And when I tell you, my girlfriend, I've known my girl since she was 10 years old, to the way that she's talking, the way that she's looking at life, it is just extraordinary for me. I'm like, wow. Because as a friend, you just, you accept them for who they are and you just go along in their journey. But she's always been, she misses out on a lot. And she's so fast, even though she has good intentions, she almost like it needed something like this to happen. And I'm not saying we wanted anything to happen to Martha. Like, no, you guys, I'm like, seriously, like I just came from church. I've been praying. It's all I do. But the perspective and the humbleness of my friend is just, I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional. To witness this is beautiful because I'm like, wow, Mom. And she said, Charlene, she goes, this is real life. This is what happens. And it slows you in your tracks. Yeah. And it's not looking good for Martha, but I'm still, I'm still praying, and I believe in miracles. I believe in everything. I believe in the power of God. And so I don't know what's going to happen or not happen. That's not for me to say. Mm-hmm. But it has just been an extraordinary, also very hard experience.
Yeah. This ties directly into what we were talking about earlier. One of the things we spent some time on was growth experiences, growth opportunities. We've made a little fun of it by saying there are also FGOs. You can figure out what that is. But those growth opportunities, when they come along, they hit us right in the middle of, right in the middle of the face, right between the eyes. And they do tend to shift our perspective. That was one of our key topics earlier today during the show, that these opportunities, when they come along, we don't like them. They aren't fun. We don't want to repeat them ever again. No. We just keep looking back at them and saying, wow, I just learned so much from that.
Yes. It just, again, it's those moments. And for me too, I've had these type of moments in my life, and it really is a shift awakening for me. It's like, it's almost like, get back to perspective, get back to what's important to you, Charlene. Because everything else just kind of just goes along, right? The money, this, the fame, all that stuff just kind of goes. But the relationships and that quality and that, I call it the yumminess of life when you have that type of, your people, is, I don't see anything else more valuable.
And that's funny because Charlene, that's what you do is you help women get into relationships. Is it not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It all ties together.
Let me see this. So that was perfect there. Who's that? Jodie? I don't okay. No, seriously, Jodie, like that's one thing, we're all good at something, but one thing I realized is that truly, like, one of the biggest decisions that you are ever going to make and that will actually shape your life is who you choose to be your life partner, because that decision alone will determine, like, honestly, your overall happiness. Because if you're with a person that there's no perfect relationship, but it matters. It really matters who we align ourselves with. Because if you're with a person, and let's just say, for an example, you can't change people, right? So if you're with a person and that person, this is not a happy person, they're a toxic person and they're miserable, whatever that is, that energy will actually affect you, because that energy will actually affect you. You can't live with a person. We're talking your partner. You can't live with a partner that's a miserable person and think that that's not gonna affect you. And if you are with a person and it is the right alignment and you are allowing that person, they're allowing you to learn yourself and grow, and and relationships really truly help you see yourself for who you are. Because when you're alone, it's hard to, like, you don't have the reflection, you don't have the oh wow, okay, I didn't really realize I wasn't that patient. I said I was patient, but now I'm in a relationship and I'm not that patient. So a good right, like, seriously, but the right alignment with the right person will make all the difference in the success of your marriage. Mm-hmm. And to me, just me personally, this is why I do what I do. There's nothing more important than having a person that you truly want to do life with. And and is it for everyone? No. And I'm not saying that you have to. I'm just saying that, to me, there's nothing more beautiful, there's nothing more fulfilling, more satisfying on having that type of true intimacy that you only can have really with your romantic partner. You can have that with other people that you love in your life. You can have intimacy, you can have connection, you can have all of that. But to really have that real true intimacy, and I'm not just talking physical, I'm talking, emotional, is with a person that you can be the rawest with, is your romantic partner. So that's why I do what I do.
That's a nutshell right there. Yeah. Well, it also occurs to me when we're talking about this, we're again, this is an extension of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about these kinds of connections, these connections not only make our lives have meaning and have purpose and have texture and 3-dimensionality or 5-dimensionality, depending on how you want to look at it, but they also provide subtext to what goes on in our lives. So we experience the day-to-day mundane stuff with the subtext of these connections playing in the background. And it's not good. I mean, you were eloquent about how beautiful it is with that primary partner, that primary romantic partner. But the connections also exist, perhaps to a lesser degree, with everyone else too. So we are being influenced by all these other people out there, and we are influencing these other people out there. So to kind of tie that together, yeah, you really want to be sure that you're tying in with somebody as your romantic partner who is the one you really want to spend your time with and you want to connect with and you want to build the energy with and so forth. But you also want to do that with the rest of your circle as well. I mean, it's not just a one person, one and done thing. No. It's an ongoing life adventure.
No, and let me tell you what I experienced and what I know too. Having connections with the people you love in your life, and let's say not just obviously being the romantic partner, but like having connection with the people you love in life. Like you could have a best friend, a mother, a father, sister, brothers. There's extensions, right? But I noticed something. When life really, really happens, for an example, Martha. Martha has 2 daughters. And she's very close to her daughters, and they have a great relationship. But her daughters are also married. and her daughters also have families, and her daughters also have kids.
Right.
Who do you think's there 24 hours? Her romantic partner.
Mm-hmm.
So that relationship, to me, it's not that you love the other people in your life less. It's different.
Sure.
It's because it's just different. It's just different. But I know this is life. This is what I'm trying to tell people. I'm like, look at, you can have great relationships with your friends, and you can have great relationships, with all kinds of people. That's beautiful, because we all go there and we visit Martha, and we're spreading so much love to her, so much prayer. She has people, you know what I mean? Like she has a group of people. Mm-hmm. But Dave is there in the weeds. Dave is there 24. Dave is feeding her. Dave is changing her. Like, Belinda and the daughters, that they're not. And so that's why I know, like, having that partner for you two to be able to help each other in life is beautiful when it's the right one. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta make sure it's the right one.
There's a caveat here.
Yeah.
The caveat is not lost on me.
I know people that are in romantic relationships and they feel as lonely as can be. They feel as lonely as can be. They're like, I have a physical body here, but I don't have that emotional connection. I don't even know if I can count on them. So that's not fun either. Like, who wants that, right? Like, that's not fun either. We don't want that. But I'm actually witnessing, which is just fascinating to me. I'm witnessing a true love story. I'm witnessing a man just absolutely have just beautiful love for his wife, and for him, and for her to him. And it's funny because even though she's really close to her daughters, Belinda and Veronica,
sure.
Belinda tells me, I know my mom. She's fine that we're going to say hi to her, but she wants Dave. She's like, get me my man. Like, she's like, you guys can visit me for as long as you want. She said, but I want my man. And so they know that. They know that that's her person. So I do believe that that's so important.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a shame we didn't get a chance to do the whole show today with you, because like we were planning to do originally, but I can see that we're kind of setting things up for a revisit so that you can go through the whole thing.
Round two.
You can actually learn
round two, because Miss
Charlene Byar's thing, right? Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll make sure that we have you back.
Fantastic.
In the meantime, I always look for how do we tie things together with what we've been talking about. Today's going to be particularly challenging because, Jodie Lynn and I, we were like literally all around the universe. This was like a rapid shot. It's like there really was not an area of metaphysics that we did not touch.
Wow. I wish I would have heard it. Yeah.
So, how do you tie all that together? I'm not really sure how you tie all that together.
Maybe we just don't. I don't know.
There's some truth to that. I have my usual things that I do at the end of a show, particularly when we have a guest, but that doesn't really fit to do today. So I think today is more like wing it toward the end. And,
I got an ending.
Yeah. I
have a question. So Walt, is Jodie a guest, or do you guys do the podcast together?
Jodie Lynn is one of my 3 co-hosts. I do 3 shows a week.
Okay.
She's a co-host. She does the Wednesday shows with me. And then I have 2 others who do shows with me on Monday. And that's my weekly.
Okay, so you have 3 co-hosts.
Yeah. And I used to have more. I used to do this 5 days a week. But I decided I need to have a little time back. So
yeah. So now you're like 3 days a week. Hold on just a second. I'm going to put mute on something because the kids are making some noise. Just a second.
That's all right. But yeah, that's something that's kind of evolved over time. And you were part of that, Jodie Lynn, and I appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah. So grateful.
Okay, I'm back.
The reason I would do this at all is just because I started this podcast years ago because I needed help. And so I figured this is a good way to get the help that I needed. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much more than I ever expected I was going to do. So I just kept it going. I mean, nominally it's about law of attraction. We don't talk about that a whole lot anymore. Occasionally we, comes into the conversation, but it's never the main topic. It hasn't been for, more than 1,500 episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
So take me back just a moment. But you did originally start.
Well, originally it was all about law of attraction, mainly because I started this in 2012. I started it because my business got destroyed by the 2008 financial crisis.
Oh.
And my ex-wife, we were married at the time, her business also got wiped out. So both of our businesses got wiped out within a month.
Oh my goodness.
Our income disappeared entirely or nearly entirely. It's pretty close to 100%.
Talk about life, right?
Wow. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And by 2012, I mean, we had made a little bit of a comeback, but we were deep in debt. I mean, it was a real nightmare. And I'd heard about law of attraction. I heard about The Secret and so forth, but it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And I felt like, well, there's probably something there and I should really learn what that is, but I don't know what to make of it. I'm too poor to go hire a coach, so I can't get a coach. I used to say I couldn't even afford to buy a self-help book, so I had to do something else. So I started a podcast because I knew how to do that. So okay, I'll do that, and it was one of those serendipitous things. And once I got it going,
that's so cool.
It was fun. Like, wow, this is really great. Yeah.
And how long you been doing it now? You just said earlier. How long is this?
2012. So this is 11 and a half years now. I've been doing it. It'll be 12 years in September.
Wow, so you're like one of the OGs in podcasting. That's amazing.
It's fun. And I'll probably keep doing it for the rest of my life just because it's one of my favorite ways to connect. It's how I connected with Jodie Lynn. Jodie Lynn was a guest originally a couple years ago.
Jodie? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've connected with so many people over the years just by doing this. Some of my best friends are people I've never met in person.
It's crazy.
Walt, that's so cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, that's really cool, Walt. That's neat. That's good stuff. Yeah. So now the podcast, just like you said, it has different conversations about different things.
And so we end up exploring all kinds of topics. I mean, and all the different kinds of guests who are on the show. So for instance, in your case, we would have been talking about, your background and how you led into becoming a love coach and doing that kind of thing. And there's usually a backstory. So we'd be drawing out what that backstory is, why it was that we ended up there and so forth. And those conversations end up going off in all kinds of interesting directions. So it's always unique every time. It doesn't even matter if the guest is coming out and talking about something we've talked about before.
Okay.
We can count on it going off in a direction that none of us expected.
Today
was kind of like the extreme example.
Yeah. Walt, I just started. I'm new. I'm new at podcast. I've been on a lot of podcasts as a guest, but I just started my own podcast. And it's fascinating. Well, I totally see what you're saying because I bring on, different guests and we talk about relationships and love and dating and all that kind of good stuff. But I love how the podcast, there's not anything specific. So I don't sit there and say, I'm going to ask you guys these specific questions. I really love to hear the journey.
Yes.
The people, the guests, and what it just takes me on a whole journey. I'm like, wow. I know I try not to have expectations and I just try to let it flow. And it does. It's pretty neat. It's pretty cool.
I'm glad that you've discovered that. And I'm glad you're doing that. I encourage anybody that I've ever encountered, if you have even a slight whim to do a podcast, do a podcast. I mean, Jodie Lynn has another podcast that she's been doing. Just on that same thing, right? I mean, because you loved it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Jodie, so now you have your own too?
Yeah, I do.
And what is your podcast about?
All about channeling and spirituality.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. This is so cool, you guys. Oh my goodness, that's cool. That's really neat.
I don't know what the ultimate title of this episode is going to be, but I think the word connections is going to be in there.
Yeah.
Because that's really what we're talking about here is these connections.
Absolutely.
Connections.
Yeah. And the more that we make these connections, the better, the more full our life becomes, the more full our life experience becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel the same with you. I've made, some truly, I feel like lifetime connections with people I've never actually met in person.
I know, it's wild.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I find that wild. I'm like, wow, you have better luck sometimes with with people around the world than you even do in your own backyard.
I counted them up. I've had over the years more than 40 co-hosts, not to mention all the hundreds of guests.
Yeah.
I currently have 3.
Yeah.
One of the 2 that does the Monday show with me was my 12th interview back in 2012.
Wow. 12.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he became my first full-time co-host.
Really?
And he did the show with me for a number of years. Then he went away for a bit because our schedules didn't match. And then he came back about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And what's really odd about it is at the time that we met, we lived about an hour and a half away from each other.
Oh my goodness.
And we've still never met in person after all these years.
That's crazy. Well, you got to go meet him.
One of these days I will. Well, I'm a little bit further away. I'm about 600 miles away from him now, so it's not quite the trip it was before.
Not so convenient now. Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually one time we came really close to meeting, but the schedules just didn't jive, so it didn't work.
Like, okay, it's okay. But
I
now
guess the point is, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter because we still have that online connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's ultimately what I was driving at there. The online connections are such a high quality when you do these kinds of in-person things that you don't quite have the same thing as when you're in the same room with somebody, but boy, it's awful close.
I know.
It's awful close.
And in ways, it's almost better at some points too, because what Charlene was talking about, that raw vulnerability, sometimes it's difficult to get there and be that open when you're sitting kneecap to kneecap with someone, unless you really trust them or really know them or whatever. But a lot of times you get nervous and that kind of gets in the way. But this boundary of not being in the same room makes me feel a little bit safer to say the things that I need to, that might be scary to say if you're, like looking right into someone's eyes.
That's funny. I know we're going to talk about relationships today because that's all I talk about, but I was going to say that's something that I tell. So like I help women date and women don't know how to date. And it's just what it is. It's okay. I teach them. And a lot of times they have a hard time. They're like, oh, the online, and I always tell them, I said, the online is a tool. But one thing that I make sure that we do is you can't get to know someone, by texting. You don't get to know someone online. Someone can just write and say everything, whatever they want. It sounds good. If you're a good writer, you can really. And so one of the first things I do, if you have a connection, I do not allow the texting back and forth. I'm like, that's a waste of your time. Get a quick face-to-face right now. Like do a just to make sure they have teeth, to make sure that I seriously, we gotta make sure because
no toothless grins. Is that what you're saying?
I know,
unless you're into that.
Like honestly, like that's one of the first things. I'm like, okay, so if you have that connection, let's get on a face call, let's get on a Zoom call, let's have a conversation like this real quick. And then if there's that, okay, then we'll take it to the next. Then we'll meet in person.
I love it. I'll make one last comment. It's my last contribution. I'll let you guys give your wrap on it. But what we do in these podcast situations where we're doing these online connections like this, I think not only is it so cool, I think it's representative and emblematic of something that is dramatically missing from the online experience for most people. And I kind of, this is a little bit unfair, but I kind of generally put it under the umbrella of social media. And my claim is there is no socializing on social media because this kind of thing doesn't happen. Social media, so-called, is about posting text and sharing a photo and putting up a 60-second video, and there's no socializing in any of that. It has its place, but let's be honest, that's not socializing. So what we need to do is find a way to get socializing back into social media, or maybe get it in there for the first time because it never really was there for the first time. But it needs to be part of it, and I think that's what we're doing. We're kind of at the vanguard of finding ways to get people to connect, to really connect online in the way that social media promised to do, but never really did.
I know, right? I know, yeah. Exactly. That's why these conversations and this interaction is where where's the meat's at. That's where it's at. Because social media, you're right. It's like, oh my goodness, you can only get the only time I can kind of make somewhat connections, but I don't really make the connection until we can see each other, in the message, the DMs or something like that. You can kind of get to know someone a little bit, but you still have to get up here. You still got to get raw, got to talk to someone, see the person, the whole thing. That's actually being social.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And how cool it would be. I think about the really young generation, you know, the Gen Z or whatever you want to call them, coming of age now, and all they've ever known about human interaction is through their phones for the most part. I mean, not entirely. It's a little bit of a generalization, and you got to be careful with those generalizations.
No. That's you're kind of right there. Let me tell you that I'm a mother of 5 kids, and my oldest is anywhere from my oldest is 33, and then I'm still raising twins that are turning 17.
Okay.
Yeah, they've never not known the phone.
Right. So what happens? This to me is where it gets cool. What happens when you introduce what we understand of, you know, real socializing? What if you introduce real socializing into their social media? To me, that just opens up incredible vistas of possibilities.
Right. Yeah. They think they're being social. That generation, the way that they communicate is so funny, because I'm like, I'm not that old, and they don't do phone numbers. It's Snapchat. Period.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, oh, okay. I said, would you get his number? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, they literally look at me like I'm like, shh, like, Mom, what are you talking about? That's how they do things completely different. That's all they've ever known. So the way to communicate, the way to check each other out is Snapchat. I mean, wow. And they send each other.
And there's a bit of connection going on there too. So you can see that they're actually moving in that direction themselves. It's almost like they're being drawn to it.
Right. But yeah, that's kind of like it's a trip. It's a trip for me to watch. And I have to, as mom, I've had to, you know, put boundaries and monitor and all those things. Oh, it's been so hard.
Because you're making it up as you go along. That's why it's so hard.
Totally. Don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So do you have a summary for us, Jodie Lynn? What's your last thing that you want to bring into it?
I do.
What I normally ask her to tie everything together with a bow. There's no way to do that, so I'm not even going to ask her that this time.
Oh, I don't know. Well, challenge I'm going to take on. We've been everywhere today, from God, the universe, connection, love, everywhere in between. And I think it really comes down to something that we were saying at the very beginning: all is the one, and the one is the all. We are all connected, and everything is conscious. And the more that you are willing to open up and be vulnerable and connect not only with yourself but those around you, the more that you will understand your own connections and those connections with others, and be able to blossom. And so will the world around us. That's what it's all about.
Connection. I love it.
Damn.
Love it.
You and I don't think she can pull it together. She still pulls the whole thing together. She still ties it together with a bow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah. Except Charlene, we'll have you back another time. Thanks for coming.
I would love to have a conversation with you guys. Yeah, I would love to have a conversation.
Wonderful meeting you.
And thank you, Jodie Lynn, for one of the more fun conversations we've had in a long time. We have a lot of good ones, but that one was really fun.
That was cool.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So thank you much. And thank you, podcast listeners everywhere who decided to put up with that for an hour. We appreciate you as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay.